honestly, I thought I was going to get out of the business for a while. I went and got my real estate license. I was going to flip houses. I'm like, I'm just going to do something else.
Yeah.
Um, and then after I kind of calmed down and was able to just think clearly, I realized that, like, hey, I can do this better and I can do
Mhm.
self-serve.
Welcome to the Planet Laundry Podcast, brought to you by Planet Laundry, the magazine of the Coin Laundry Association. This episode is sponsored by Sense. Sense is the leading all-in-one business management system designed for laundromat operators. Their platform enhances operations, provides valuable insights, and drives business growth with a comprehensive suite of tools, including advanced point-of-sale systems, on-machine payment solutions, online order tracking for pickup and delivery, robust reporting, marketing tools, and seamless payment processing. The most successful laundromats trust Sense to streamline their operations. To learn more about their wide range of solutions to help you succeed, visit trysense.com/solutions and enjoy the podcast. This is the Planet Laundry Podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Planet Laundry Magazine, Bob Nieman. Today, I'm with Jason Dodge, who is the owner of Quick Wash Laundromats, which is a 3-store chain in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In addition, Jason has been very active with CLA's LaundryCares Foundation, actually having hosted a couple of free laundry events at his stores earlier this year. Hey, Jason, you're a busy guy. Thanks very much for taking some time and being on the podcast today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and it's good to be able to do this, and thank you for working with my hectic schedule to make sure we could fit it in. So
Oh, anytime, anytime. It's my pleasure. Listen, I'm always interested how people get into the industry. I mean, people come to the laundromat business through so many varying paths, and I was just wondering, what was your professional career before you got into laundromats, and how did the laundry industry finally find its way into the picture for you?
yeah, I think it's a story like a lot of other people, but I kind of, in my 20s was kind of bumping through trying to start different businesses.
Mhm.
And started a couple. I had an auto salvage business for a while with a partner that didn't work out. Ended up kind of just failing on quite a few things, and ended up getting a job in the car business. So I sold cars for a couple years,
Mhm.
and then ended up being like the finance person you would see before you leave when you're buying a car. I would do all the paperwork and everything for everybody. I did that for about 10 years, and right at the end of or right around that 10-year mark, we were having children, and we had t-ball games and all the stuff that's going on, and I was looking for a job with not so many hours, and ended up getting fired in that process from my finance job. So I was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, I am not going back in the car business. This is the last thing I want to do. So I need to, I have these young kids. My wife just went back to school. She just wanted to be a nurse. She's a nurse now. She wanted to be a nurse and was going back to school for that.
Mhm.
And I just started looking for other businesses, and somehow through like looking at radiator franchises and different like parts thing, like because my background was cars, so I was thinking like automotive kind of stuff. Even
Sure.
looked at a couple, like a sub shop, and I looked at an ice cream
Okay.
franchise, which good thing I didn't buy that. They're closed now. And somehow I there was a laundromat for sale really close to my house, and it was a really small store, and I just started looking at it, and I was talking to my parents, my stepdad, about it, and I said, "Hey, like I'm looking at this laundromat over here," and I called the owner, and he goes, "Well, a friend of mine owns a laundromat in Milwaukee." He goes, "I think he sold it," um, but he started telling me about it, and I'm like, "Well," I said, "Can I have can give me his phone number? Like, I need to talk to this guy because I need to learn about this industry. I didn't know anything about it."
Mhm.
Um, and then, sure enough, the guy, we ended up hooking up. And he's like, "Oh no, I just sold a laundromat. But so it's not on the market, but we can get together and we can meet." So we ended up going out to lunch, and actually, I should let me rewind. We met Thanksgiving Day. The store was closed, and he was there cleaning some machines and stuff. And we just were talking, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, that buyer that I had, he couldn't get financed or whatever." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So
Mhm.
kind of opened the door for me a little bit, and somehow magically was able to through, honestly, like I used everything through like a line of credit on my house, cashing out my 401k,
Right.
raising private funds, getting a loan from the guy selling the laundromat, like just all of these, personal savings, just everything, pulled the
Right.
money together and was able to buy it without a bank.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so it just kind of, just started looking at this little one that really wasn't making any money and then buying a larger location that was about 4,500 square feet in a lease strip mall,
Hmm.
wash and fold, dry clean drop off site,
Hmm.
and had tanning beds also,
Right.
and fully staffed. And it just kind of just jumped into it, not knowing what I was doing, just no
Right.
clue. So that's how it started.
Yeah.
So, and that was
Sometimes it's
17
better
years.
not knowing too much, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a. That's my problem. Sometimes is I know too much, and that scares me away a lot of things. So yeah, I jumped in blind, and it worked out well. So
Mhm. Well, I mean, certainly you were looking for something with more of a flexible schedule for yourself, beyond the
yes,
automotive industry. Was there anything else that attracted you to the laundry business besides that, the flexibility of it,
was
amongst all
mostly
the
I
other
wanted to
things
be
that you would look at?
self-employed. So just like everybody else, I think I thought that it was more passive than it is.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
sounded like an easy business to run, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know any better. So that's I think what attracted me. And I was thinking that, first I was looking for an unattended store and then ended up with an attended store.
Yeah.
And it just so I'm like, well, I'll just hire staff and we'll figure it out. But I ended up working about 40 hours a week in that store for quite a few
Mhm.
years figuring
Mhm.
it out. Um, but it I guess that's so those I guess so some of those early things is what attracted me to it, thinking that it's passive, but I
Right.
realized that that's not what it is. But
Right.
that's what attracted me to it.
Right. Right. Well, who helped you when you were first getting into the business? Is there anyone that stands out, or anything that kind of gave you that nudge that helped you?
Yeah, so I mean, there's there's a handful of entrepreneur type people in my family. So when I was looking at this, I was able to bounce some of those, some of my ideas and some things off of them.
Mhm.
And my family's always been my wife and everybody, and my mother, my stepfather, and everybody have always been very supportive of everything. So I was able to talk to them and kind of use some of their resources
Mhm.
um, to help me kind of evaluate the business and get it going. So that was kind of some of my early on
Sure.
um,
Mhm.
help. Once I owned the laundromat, the biggest help I got, the seller introduced me to their repair person, and that guy was just great.
Right.
And I watched. I didn't know how to fix anything. I stood over his shoulders all the time, and I made sure it was okay. I said, "Man, it's like I need to know how to fix this stuff." So,
Yeah.
and he walked me through everything, and I had to pay the guy for a good year, but then after that, and he was so busy, he didn't mind. Like he goes, "I don't." He goes, "As much
Mhm.
as I love your business, like I'm already really busy." So he didn't have any problem helping me, and
Right.
after a good year or so, like I was almost never calling the guy. So then so I had to pay for it in the beginning to get that education,
Right.
but then I just started fixing everything on my own. So
Right. And that's
that
that's
helped.
certainly a huge help, being
Yeah.
mechanically inclined and learning that, and at least learning the easy fixes that you can do yourself, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, you don't want to
Mhm.
call a repair guy for a coin jam or
Mhm.
something like that, or a drain that just needs to be cleaned out. There's some really easy things that anybody can do if you don't mind getting your hands a little dirty. So
Right, right, right. Well, as I mentioned at the outset, you now have 3 stores, in Milwaukee. What do you look for in a laundromat? What are you looking for, when you're looking to purchase or grow that business?
yeah, I mean, obviously it's different but the same whether it's an existing location or a new location. But first things first, you're looking at the demographics of the neighborhood. Is this really a good place for a laundromat? And sometimes neighborhoods change. So even though there's a laundromat there, it doesn't mean that it's still a good area for a laundromat. So
Mhm.
um, so you want to look at, obviously demographics is very important. So older housing stock, renters, families with children,
Mhm.
um, lower income helps. So you want to kind of just make sure that that neighborhood is catering, or that the laundromat's catering the right neighborhood. But then
Mhm.
also, what's the competition like in that area? Are there a bunch of if it's an existing store, are there a bunch of new stores there? And if you're looking to build a new store, are there a bunch of old stores there? So you're kind of looking at it in
Yeah.
different ways because, if there's some neglect and some laundromats that are a little older that where they're not taking care of their customers well,
Hmm.
that might be an opportunity if you can find the right building in the right spot. So when
Right.
it comes to building a store, now you're looking at, is it on a busy street? Is it easy accessible? Can you get in and out of that location easily? The cars.
Hmm.
How much parking do you have? And the parking is a
Hmm.
huge thing. I know there's markets where parking isn't as big, maybe in New York and things like that. But
Hmm.
here in Milwaukee, like people aren't going to stop it. If you have no parking, they're not coming there. So
Hmm.
the newest place, you can park 35, 40 cars right around my building. And I'll probably never need that many parking spots.
Hmm.
But it's great to have it. And that was a huge selling point for me. It's
Hmm.
on a corner, it's on a busy street.
Hmm.
Um, the competition there is decent, but there's a good amount of older laundromats there. And
Hmm.
I feel like it's kind of a growing market too. So I think that area has a bigger need now than it had in the past for a laundromat. So those are
Right.
some of the things that I kind of look for, depending on whether it's newer or existing.
Right. You mentioned the importance of parking. Do you have a rule of thumb that you use as far as how many parking spots you would require for a certain sized store, or how do you look at it, and how do you gauge whether you have enough parking or not?
Yeah, I don't really look at it. So, you know, the one store is like 5,000 square feet, and then the newest build is just under 6,000 square feet.
Hmm.
They're both somewhere between 15 and 1,800 pounds of capacity. I
Okay.
know that at the Capitol store we have maybe 20 parking spots, and at sometimes that's not enough. So I
Okay.
knew that I wanted more.
Hmm.
Um, and you want to have parking for obviously your busiest hour or two, which might just be a certain period on a Sunday. You just want to make sure
Yeah.
that when everybody's cramming in at 10 a.m. on Sunday,
Yeah.
um, that you got enough parking spots for that. Because during the week you're gonna have parking. Like
Right.
you're gonna have plenty of
Right.
parking. Just want to make sure you
Right.
got it during your busiest times. But so I guess I don't have a specific rule of thumb, but
Okay. But yeah, it's
I
the
know that
key.
I just kind
Yeah.
of the more the better. If there's six
Yeah.
spots, you're way off. If there's 10, it's not happening. But then that depends on the size of the store too. So maybe,
Hmm.
but I don't have a specific, this much,
Hmm.
capacity should be this many parking spots, I guess.
Okay,
So
sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. In the three separate markets that you're in, how have you tried to differentiate your stores from the other laundromats that may be in those markets?
So the one of the stores is not a quick wash brand. It's actually it's an older store that's an unattended in a lease space, and that's one that I still keep. And that's actually a store that doesn't have great parking and things like that. And we've been able to kind of figure it out, but its upside is limited because of that. But
Hmm.
when you're with a new store, and this is why I love building new right now, is it's so easy to make something different that's not there. So you can build a store, um, put the big machines close to the door. You can have them facing the windows if you want. You can make sure that, or try to have to the best of your ability, depending on the layout of the store. But you want, can I do 7 foot wide aisles between, or 8 or 9 foot aisles? I like to have tables with sitting, kind of like restaurant seating, which a lot of
Hmm.
people like kind of the airport type seating. And I'm not a big fan of that. I like it where people can bring a computer and the children can do their homework and they're sitting there and they're more comfortable. Um,
Right.
so they're in creating spaces for that. And then, having an area for the children's area, for the children's books. And it
Hmm.
just, that kind of, the older laundromats where they would put the big machines in the back and it's a skinny narrow store and there's not as much parking, it just
Hmm.
kind of, it's really easy to create a different environment when you're building new. You can just however you can imagine it, that's what you can do. And there's a lot of great stores
Right.
out there, so there's a lot of good ways to find little cool things to put in your store.
Right.
But there's so many things that we do differently. Polished concrete floors,
Yeah.
stainless steel ductwork,
Yeah.
spiral ducting, tons of
Hmm.
stainless machines, touch screens, having apps, having card systems. There's so many
Hmm.
things, just having staff there, being nice, keeping the store clean,
Hmm.
and just having it look really modern.
Right.
Those are all just great things that you can do in a new store. So,
Right.
and you can do
Right.
that in a retool and other things too, but it's just a little more challenging.
Yeah, it's a little tougher when you have the confines of an existing store and an existing layout that may
Yeah.
not work with, I guess, your vision. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, that's great stuff. Well, how has your business, your laundry business, evolved through the years? Because you've been in this business now for quite a while. So, how do you see, I guess, your vision of the business or your operations evolving?
So, my first, so I've owned 4 stores. I have 3 currently, but I started with 2 lease spaces, and then I'm, now building them from scratch. Um, I think that, just that's kind of like, I don't want to lease anymore. I don't want to go down that path. I want to stick with standalone buildings. I really,
Mhm.
I would do a strip mall if I could own it, if it was a real small one, but I really want dedicated parking for my place.
Mhm.
And I really like starting with a blank canvas. I mean, that's kind of the part of it is, well, obviously you have a building that's there. I'm not building new buildings yet. We're using existing buildings,
Okay.
um, but you can completely reimagine the space. So that's a big evolution for me, going from existing laundromats to being able to build new. And it took me a long time to do that,
Yeah.
because it's expensive. So it took a
Right.
while to get there, but that's how it's evolved for me, really.
Okay. All right. Well, I know that when you first got into the business, or maybe shortly thereafter, you did take a run at full service laundry or wash, dry, fold, and maybe I don't know if you did pick up and delivery, but I know you did wash, dry, fold, maybe some drop off laundry, and it's something that at this point now you're a strictly self service operation. So you've kind of
Mhm.
changed your thinking on that. I guess through the years, can you tell me what are your thoughts on that? Because obviously, wash, dry, fold, and pickup and delivery are gaining traction each year in popularity,
Yeah.
certainly with the addition of technology. And you're kind of running contrary to that. So
Yeah.
I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on running a self-service operation.
Yeah. So, you know, I never wanted I never wanted wash and fold. That was never
Mhm.
really in the game plan. So it just kind of happened that way, ended up being the store that I got into. And
Okay.
I learned to adapt, and we had all the folding techniques and all the things, and we did not do pickup and delivery. And I almost pulled the trigger on that a couple times. I was going to do that. And I'm actually happy I didn't, because pickup and delivery, although it's a great business and some people do really well with it, it's a completely different type of business. And I personally, honestly, got kind of burnt out on my first store. So
Yeah.
the constant retraining and turnover in staff, and having to retrain and retrain and train, and then somebody who kind of start doing their own thing, and then you got to bring them back and retrain them again. It just got to be too much for me. It started to drive me crazy, and it took me away from being able to buy another location. And I'm like, man, why I'm spending so much time training staff and filling in the schedule and running around, like I don't even have time to look for another laundry. And that was something that bothered me a lot. And
Yeah.
um, I had bought the little unattended store at some point, like maybe 5 years after I opened, um, where I bought the first one, but I felt like I was stuck and I was getting burnt out just with all of the staffing issues. And I was never to the point where I could hire a manager or somebody to kind of
Mm,
oversee that. We just never got to that revenue point with that particular store.
yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up pickup and delivery at some point, so that I could hopefully get to a revenue point where I, could get that in there. But I just decided to go a completely different direction and just sell it. So, and
Yeah.
honestly, I thought I was going to get out of the business for a while. I went and got my real estate license. I was going to flip houses. I'm like, I'm just going to do something else.
Yeah.
Um, and then after I kind of calmed down and was able to just think clearly, I realized that, like, hey, I can do this better, and I can do
Mhm.
self-serve. So
Right.
the 2 stores that I built after that, I do have an area where we could store laundry. So I always had this thing in the back of my head, like,
Right.
if I
Right.
made a mistake, if I
Mhm.
didn't, even though I feel like I'm really good at looking at demographic reports and interpreting revenue and all of that from those things, and
Mhm.
evaluating competition, I
Mhm.
still thought, if for some reason I'm wrong, or
Yeah.
something changes in the market later down the road, if
Well, that's
I
true.
want to have the room to add wash and fold just in case. So
Right.
we have that ability.
Yeah.
to add that. And the stores are two new ones are really could be really well suited for it. But at the
Hmm.
moment,
Hmm.
I just want to focus on owning real estate and building
Hmm.
laundromats, you know, and,
Hmm.
and putting the laundromat where the laundromat is really needed. So that's just been my direction. And there's some
That's
people that are
really
really, really good at just a self-service thing. Like you don't, if you run it right and they're in the right spots, you really don't need those other things.
cool. Hmm.
But those are other great revenue sources if that's something you're looking to do. So
Right, right. And it certainly simplified your life a little bit, I would think.
it has simplified my life. We made a lot of changes with how we hire staff, how we train staff, how we
Hmm.
schedule everybody. We
Hmm.
brought in a lot of technology just for scheduling and things like that to keep
Hmm.
everybody going. We have a lot of checklists and, and
Hmm.
there's always challenges with that, but the challenges are much easier than they were having 100 pounds of laundry sitting there and somebody calling in sick. And now you have to go in and fold all this laundry.
Right.
I can literally just close a gate and I'm like, we're going to be unattended for 2 hours until the next person comes in. It's just kind of, if there's a
Right.
call in,
Hmm.
it's much easier to handle and much easier to get somebody to come in. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm going right now.
Perfect. Listen, I know that a big part of your operation is being part of the community and serving the community. And you recently hosted a couple of free laundry and literacy events for the LaundryCares Foundation. Can you tell me a little bit about those events and how were they received by the community and the residents and your customers?
Yeah, so the community absolutely loved it. And that's honestly, you get such a good feeling. I got such a good feeling personally being able to do that for everybody in the community. And it pays off in so many different ways.
Hmm.
Um, when I first started reading about, just the Replay Learn Center space before kind of the free wash thing, and
Hmm.
then the free wash after that, like I wanted to be a part of it right away, but it just wasn't
Yeah.
the facility I had wasn't suited for it.
Hmm.
But then, so then as soon as I had the right facility, and got in contact with Ann and started talking and planning and stuff like that, it just, I was so excited to do it and actually being able to launch it and do it. Man, it was just so much fun. And the stories you hear from people, like,
Hmm.
I probably wouldn't, I wouldn't be able to do my laundry this week had it not been for this event. Like it just wasn't in the budget. So now we're washing all their clothes for free and getting
Right.
them going. And I had a gentleman that stopped up just to eat because we had food there. Like he was
Yeah.
hungry and he's
Yeah.
like, "Well, you guys have food." I'm like, "Help yourself, man. Just go and eat." So,
Yeah.
um, so it was really rewarding that way for me personally to be able to help out, and it was really well received. And I feel like that pays dividends kind of going forward a little bit. Like it's good to give back and it's good to
Hmm.
volunteer and do things and help your community. That stuff feels good, but it's also good
Hmm.
for, not just for them, but for business and for everything else because they know you're not just there, to run a business. Now you're actually there to kind of to help everybody a little bit. So I think that's really good for business long term.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I've been thrilled with it. So I volunteered at one in Atlanta. We did the two at my store. Then I volunteered one here locally in Milwaukee, and now I'm going to volunteer at one in Chicago later today. So,
Yeah.
so clearly I've caught the bug, and I'm having fun doing it. So,
Yeah, no, hey, that's awesome, and I know that's a big part of your business, and I think it's great. And like you said, it certainly lets the community know that you're not just there to take, you're there to give back. And
yeah,
certainly the literacy part of it as well. As soon as people walk in the store and they see a Read Play Learn Center, they know that, hey, this is someone who cares about more than just getting our money and getting our business,
yeah.
but helping the kids and things like that.
So in the Villard store, the newest one that I just built,
Yeah.
I grew up literally 7, 8 blocks west of that building. So I went to elementary school in that neighborhood. I went to middle school in that neighborhood. The
Hmm.
building that we built it in, I would ride the city bus past that on the way to middle school, like never having
Wow.
a clue
Yeah.
that that's something I'm going to own later. And
That's crazy,
one of my
right? Yeah.
first jobs out of high school was across the street, literally right across the street. That building's still there, where I
Hmm.
worked like driving a tow truck and changing oil for a guy that worked there.
Yeah.
And so, and that business is in a different building, but still in the neighborhood. So, like, I have a
Hmm.
close connection with that neighborhood because I drive past that little big four family, little apartment, upstairs, apartment number
Yeah.
3, where I grew up with my mom, lived there through 8th grade.
Yeah.
And so like to me, it was really important to give back, especially to that community, because I just have a close connection with,
Yeah.
with that neighborhood. So
Yeah.
yeah,
The bond is there. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah, that's great, Jason. What's your favorite aspect of the laundromat business, if you can choose?
The best part for me, honestly, is just the freedom it provides me. And it's not that,
Mm,
like, I work a lot and I work 7 days a week, but I'm not working, sunlight to, I'm not working all day. So I can kind of
mhm.
normally, although it's been really tough to schedule me lately, like normally my life is pretty easy to schedule around. And I'm like, well, I'll fix
Right.
those couple machines later, or I'll go, I try to stop in and talk to staff pretty often, and,
Mhm.
I gotta buy supplies and stuff. But
Yeah.
but those are things that I can schedule and I can do. So
Mhm.
if I need to schedule a meeting or go out to dinner with my wife or out to lunch with my mom, or those things are pretty easy for me to do. And
Mhm.
that's kind of the freedom that this industry can provide. So that's been really rewarding for me, and to be at this point in my life where I can do other things, um knowing right now that I have these businesses out there running. And
Mhm.
at the moment the phone's not ringing, so that's great. So um yeah, so it's been great being
Yeah.
able to kind of schedule, my work around my actual life is has been really good for me. So
Yeah, yeah, fitting everything in around the business, absolutely. Yeah, hey, what are some of the biggest concerns that you're hearing from other laundry owners and other folks in the industry that you talk to? What are store owners concerned about these days?
yeah, I mean, there's a few things that kind of always seem to come back.
Yeah.
And I feel that some people are concerned with the growth of the franchise models that are coming in.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I understand why they're concerned. I don't have a problem with the franchise model. And honestly, if there was a franchise model when I was looking, I probably would have been looking at that more serious, because I know somebody would have been holding my hand to kind of guide me through the process.
Right.
And I looked at buying a franchise, completely different business
Yeah.
at that time.
Hmm.
A few different franchises, but so I don't see an issue with it. But I think some people are just concerned about the growth, like,
Right.
and how fast they want to grow, and I think they're concerned about oversaturation and things like that.
Hmm.
The other thing that I hear about, is the cost of equipment is one thing, of new washers and dryers and just all laundry equipment, really.
Hmm.
But then also not really knowing, like, the starting point of what a washer dryer costs. So I think not really having a full disclosure from your
Right.
distributor of what an MSRP is. Like when you
Hmm.
go to buy a car, you're like, oh, I know this car is 30,000. And you know
Yeah.
that that's kind of the starting point. And you can, of course, add things to it that makes it cost more, or
Right.
maybe you can negotiate a little bit and get it down a little bit. I think in the industry, it's not really known where you're starting and ending. So that, I
Hmm.
think, just creates a little bit of friction that,
Hmm.
by simply having a starting point, I think would eliminate a lot of that, because it would just create a baseline where
Right.
everybody could be like, okay, this is the starting point. This washer's 10 grand. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, if I add the cart system and
Hmm.
the high extraction speed or whatever, like, it gets more money. But so
Hmm.
at least that way you kind of have a baseline. So I think that whenever somebody is retooling or something like that,
Hmm.
there's all these like text messages, or they're posting on Facebook or something like, I don't even know if I'm getting a good deal, or this place is high, or this place is low. And
Yeah.
people are kind of all over the place. And it is hard to trust people when you don't know, like, where are we starting from? So I think that's a concern that I'm hoping the industry will eventually get to, that where we at least have some sort of disclosure of an MSRP, a suggested retail price. So
Right, right. Addressing a little bit of that blurred area, that little the fuzziness of it. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And I don't think anybody has a problem. Like, I want my distributor, and I have a great distributor.
Hmm.
Bill Dorner has been with RJ Cool, and these guys been around forever,
Hmm.
and he's a great, honest guy. And I lucked out having a guy like that.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't have those issues, and I really trust him and things like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think just having that, people, trying to earn that trust, and when you're first meeting somebody, they don't really know what that baseline is. So I think that would kind of help out a little bit. But yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Hey, Jason, what do you find that most laundry owners get wrong?
So I think that I think it's exactly what I did. I think they fully don't understand the demands of a laundromat when you get into it. So
Yeah.
you think that it's a passive business, and some of these franchises they're selling is a semi-passive business. And I know people that run it very close to passive. So it can be
Mhm.
done, but you need a certain amount of knowledge base or somebody assisting you to get you there. But um,
Mhm.
so you really need to understand the demands, because when you hop into one, like, you need to be prepared for that phone call or ring whenever, especially if you're buying an existing store with older equipment that's unattended.
Mhm.
That place is going to work you. Like, your
Yeah.
cleaning person's going to quit, or you're going to be cleaning the store every day.
Yeah.
Things are going to be breaking. So there's just a lot of things that you just don't know early on. Even if it comes like, oh, I'm just going to replace the washers.
Yeah.
Well, do you have the right electrical requirements? Do you have a drain trough, or just, there's all these little things that go into, do you have the right water supply and everything? There's all these things that go
Mhm.
involved in, do you have the right size concrete under, how thick is your concrete floor? Like, people just don't think of that because they don't
Mhm.
know. And I didn't
Yeah.
know, now I do, but yeah, so I think just not understanding demands and everything that goes into it are some of those things that people get wrong. So,
Mhm. 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 Now, for yourself personally, what's maybe the biggest mistake that you've made in this industry, and
man,
and how did you recover from it?
I make mistakes every day. I actually had to think about this a little bit, because I'm going, what's the biggest mistake I made?
Yeah.
I think the first store, I didn't fully understand the lease I was signing, and it all ended up working itself out. But
Mhm.
you really need to understand what's all involved in that lease, and that a commercial lease is very different from a residential lease.
Yeah.
And where a residential lease, the landlord's paying to fix a lot of stuff, but in a commercial lease, in most situations, that tenant is fixing everything. So
Right.
um, I didn't really understand that completely when I was getting I knew some of it, but
Mhm.
I much better understand that now. But then the other thing is, when it comes to exit strategies, it's like, say you want to sell the business, or that building owner wants to sell the building. Um, where does that leave you? So you need to understand all those things, so that if you do want to sell your business, can you get out of the lease? Can you
Right.
transfer that lease to the next owner? And are you still responsible for that lease if that new owner doesn't, go through with everything? So there's all this language in there that you need to
Right.
have a good attorney, a real estate attorney, that can read that stuff
Mhm.
and interpret it for you. Because I mean, I had a relative who's actually a very smart person who walked me through a lot of the language, and I did hire an attorney at some point,
Mhm.
but he ended up quitting on me. So we
Mhm.
tried, but then you run up against deadlines, and I signed a lease and it ended up being okay, but
Mhm.
there were lots of little things in there.
Mhm.
The other thing is, what if, and you hear this every once in a while, you sign this lease, the lease is too short now. And let's say you got a new building owner, and all of a sudden that guy wants to own a laundromat one day. Well, he might not renew your lease. So you need to really protect yourself. And I
Yeah.
have seen that happen a couple times.
Mhm.
Um, I tried buying a laundromat. This guy was retiring, being forced into retirement a little bit, and the building owner wanted to own it. And the,
Mhm.
the building owner didn't understand how to run it. He ended up running it into the ground, and it's completely out of business now. But that guy lost his lease. He just didn't get it renewed. So,
Yeah. Right.
but you need to know all those things, and make sure that you're well protected, because equipment's expensive,
Mhm.
infrastructure's expensive, and
Mhm.
it's not easy to move. It's not like moving,
Uh,
any other type of retail store. So
right.
yeah, so the
Right.
lease, that was my biggest mistake.
Yeah.
The biggest thing.
Well, these days, where do you turn for business advice?
So I found that one thing I'm really good at is talking to people and getting to know people. And I've been really fortunate in bumping into some guys that we've met at CLA events and other types of laundry events,
Mhm.
that I've become really good friends with. And Peter Mayberry is one of those guys who owns a bunch of locations, and we text on the daily, and then we're in a
Mhm.
group text, and
Yeah.
Chris Schultz, who's part of Midwest Laundries out of Chicago, he's doing the
Free laundry day.
at the family store, Fresh Laundry. They're doing the LaundryCares event today. So
Right.
he's become a great friend. We text on the daily. So it's kind of,
Mhm.
and there's a couple other guys, Logan and Matt, out of Chicago, and Logan's out of Indiana. And so, but we're on this group thread we're always, if there's an issue, whether it's just with a machine
Mhm.
or I don't know, we just want to vent about something that happened that day or whatever. Like these guys are always there for me, and we're all there for each other and just kind of helping get
Right.
through. And everybody's got a unique skill set that the other
Mhm.
person kind of doesn't have. So
Mhm.
it's been it's been really helpful for me. And honestly, I wouldn't have been able to buy this building had I not gotten advice from Peter specifically in that group. Like he gave me advice
Sure.
that allowed me
Yeah.
to inject that advice into on how I purchased that building, that I wouldn't have got it otherwise. I know that for a
Mhm.
fact. So I mean, so there's having those friendships and that network of other laundry owners that's really helpful. So
Right.
so I'm
It's
thankful for that.
important.
But yeah.
It's important to have that circle of maybe other operators who've done things that maybe you want to do or have made mistakes or things like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm. Mhm. Um, what are your goals for 2025? What are you looking to accomplish next year?
Oh, it's gonna be such a busy year. So obviously, well, we told you, we spoke about it. Like my wife and I are building a new house right now, so we got to
Mhm.
get moving into this new house. That's why we got all these boxes behind me. So we're working on that. But
Yeah.
the new store, we just turned one this month, so that store is still growing, and it takes a couple of years really for a new store to kind of reach where it's going to go. Um, so this week we're doing a double your money event, just trying to get the word out, attract some more customers, let people know that we're there, give hopefully people that have never been there an opportunity to go there and give us a shot. So I want to continue to grow that business for the next year, and I need to start looking for the next location.
Mhm.
And I'm always kind of looking, but at the moment, just with building the house and growing this business, it's a lot for me,
Right.
But we're gonna in 2025. I think I'll be positioned, hopefully second quarter of 2025, where I can start looking for another building and hopefully moving on something. So
Mhm. Mhm. Perfect.
those are the goals.
Yeah. What advice would you share with potential investors in the industry that maybe you wished you knew when you were first getting into the business?
Um, and yeah, that's a tough one. So, and we just discussed this. Like sometimes jumping in blind has its benefits. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
wouldn't really change it any way for me.
Mhm.
But I would say for new owners, you need to understand the difference between a good and a bad location, if a location did go bad, why? If there's a store, a dark store or something, why did it go bad? So you need to learn those things, and that's not always easy to learn that.
Mhm.
So you need to surround yourself with like-minded people and maybe join groups like the CLA and stuff like that to kind of
Mhm.
inject yourself into areas where people are going to be talking about that.
Right.
Um, so you need to do your homework. You need to know what a retool costs. You really need to learn what goes into a profit and loss statement.
Mhm.
And I see
Yeah.
this so many times where there's somebody selling a business, could be any kind of business, and you look at this profit and loss, and I'm going, this is not the full picture here. We're missing so many things.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
for whatever reason, with laundromat specifically, the seller likes to leave payroll off of there, especially if it's an unattended store. And
Mhm.
it's like, well, who's cleaning the store? Why? Maybe it's them or it's somebody else. I don't know what the story is, but the payroll's
Yeah.
never there because they're just like, well, you can clean it yourself every day. It's like, well, no, man, I got other stuff I'm doing. Like, I can't be here every night, or every morning to open and close the store and clean it. So,
Right.
um, you really need to know what goes in that profit loss and make sure that everything is there that should be there.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a lot of people and there's a lot of resources out there where there's groups that are talking about that and can kind of help you with that thing. So, um, you should learn how to project revenue, like realistic revenue based off of industry research that's known. And the CLA does this research and they come out with these things that tell you that, you know, I think I wrote it down like 30% of renters use laundromats, 50% of renters will use laundromats. So it's a 30% of renters, 50% of households under $25,000 a year will use laundromats, so kind of knowing that, and then knowing what the average person might spend, you can project revenue. So, and you can run a spreadsheet and run demographics and actually, project what revenue would be shared by all the laundromats in that area, in that trade area, but you can get a good picture of what it's going to look like. So there's so many things in this industry that I didn't know when I first got into it, all these little things that really, once you start knowing these things and getting your head wrapped around it, it makes it a little easier. So
right. Do your homework. Right.
Do your homework.
Yeah. Last question for you, Jason. I really appreciate your time today. The secret to being a successful laundry entrepreneur is blank. What is it?
Never stop learning, pivot when necessary, embrace change, because things change all the time and you need to stay relevant. So that's the big thing, is you need to stay involved, keep learning. If what you're doing isn't working, you need to pivot and you need to do something else. And I'm not saying you got to do a different business. You need to do your business a different way. Whether it's marketing or keeping the store cleaner or getting rid of staff and getting the right staff there. You're always pivoting, you're always learning, you're always changing. So that's the key, staying successful in my mind.
Perfect. Let's leave it right there. I think that's a great final word. Hey, Jason, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I always learn something. And again, I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on our podcast today. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to Planet Laundry at PlanetLaundry.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube.